Hello everyone, welcome to this video which is on setting up your video conference. And this will be of particular interest to new teachers, but I hope will also be relevant to those of you who've done a video conference before. After all, it's always good to reflect back on what we've done and to improve. Now let's start off by thinking about what do we think of when we think of a video conference, and something like this is very often the answer. But it's quite important to remember that it's actually a great deal more straightforward than this, and that you don't need this expensive dedicated equipment. So I'm going to start off by outlining the things that you do need for a face-to-face VC. So the first is a laptop or PC. So you need something to run the video conference from. You need a computer of some description. This needs to be connected to the internet, and it's a good idea to use a wired connection. I know a lot of us now have wireless in schools, but there are problems with wireless. It's one extra thing to go wrong or break down, and that actually a wired connection gives you a much greater stability of signal. So if you can manage one, we recommend you use a wired one. You'll obviously need a webcam so that the student's image will be able to be projected out to their partner school. You'll need a mic so they can speak. You'll need some external speakers so that they'll be able to hear properly, because generally the speakers in computers and laptops are very weak. And you need something to help them see. So a data projector is often used by many schools, but a big monitor will do just as well. Now, of all of these, the most important is the mic. You can get away with using the camera that comes with your laptop or PC. That will work, that will be just as good, but an external mic is an essential. The mics inside laptops or PCs are very rarely good enough. They also tend to be very general and hard to control. So an external mic is a must. It's also a good idea to make sure you have Skype installed on the computer you're using, both for your connection but also so that our tech team can work with you to make setting all of this up really easy. Now, a lot of people say, why do we need to be wired into the internet? Okay, because the internet connection is an important part of this whole process. What I'm going to do now is try and explain the way that bandwidth works. If you already know how bandwidth works, you can skip this bit, because this is a very general, very loose and very rough introduction for the layperson. So let's just say, for example, your school has 5 meg of bandwidth coming in from your ISP. Now, what you actually receive may not be 5 meg, because the 5 meg that leaves your internet service provider may be tapped into by other people before it reaches you. And bandwidth works a bit like water pressure. If you have one pipeline leading to one tap, you'll always have good water pressure. But if 30 or 40 other people, maybe 50 or 100, are all using your pipeline as well, sometimes there won't be enough water pressure to get the water to you, or there'll certainly be low pressure. And bandwidth works the same way. If those other users are using a lot of bandwidth, there'll be less left for everyone else. So maybe that 5 meg, by the time it gets to your school, might be as low as 2.5. Who's using it in your school? Well, very often the administration are using this web connection as well. So they won't be using a lot, but what they use may take a bit away from what's available to you. And also reflect on what's happening in your school. You may have 2 computer suites that are being used. So of the 5 meg that your ISP tell you you're getting, maybe you're getting 2 meg. If those then go through to school admin, who maybe skim off some of it, the rest comes through to the 2 school computer suites. If you have 20 computers there, all on the internet, they're going to use up a lot of bandwidth. Which means that out of that 5 meg, there's not a lot left for your VC. And that's not bad news, because in fact we only need about 384 kilobytes per second to run a VC. So that's not a lot of bandwidth. But if that bandwidth isn't there, then we have problems. The great thing about this is that actually there's something we can do. while you're running your VC, you can ask other users in the school to not use the internet, because what that will do is mean that all that extra pressure, all that extra bandwidth, instead of going to all these different people, it's all coming to your VC. So that way you'll be able to maintain a good steady signal. Now obviously, as I said, that's only a rough idea of how bandwidth works, but it's worth getting our heads around it because it's a very important component of the video conference experience. Now another thing we can do to make a big difference to our video conference is think about the room layout. Okay? So what I'm going to do is show you some examples. Now I'm not saying that any of these examples are particularly good, and I'm not saying that any of them are particularly bad. They're just examples of what people do. Because actually, we all have to work with the situation that we've got. We all have to work in the rooms that we've got, with the lighting we've got, and the equipment that we've got. So it's not a question of looking for perfection. It's a question of trying to do the best with what we've got. So I just want to look at some examples, pick up some of the things that are being done well, maybe suggest some things that could be done better, and by the end we should, I hope, be able to think about some rough guidelines to help us establish a good way of setting up a room for a video conference. So here's our first group of students. As you can see, it's a small group, so that's great. They're all sitting right in front of the camera, and it's very well lit. It's lit artificially. There's no bright natural light, so we're able to see all the students pretty clearly. They're using a wired external mic. This girl is holding it, so we're able to hear her speaking and see her at the same time. Ideally, it might be nice if the students in the back row would consider standing up. But this is a good setup for a small group of students. We see everyone, we can hear everyone. It's good. This is a larger group of students seated around a conference table. Now again, it's very well lit. All the natural light is blocked out and we're just using artificial light, so that's good. The students are all pretty much visible, and they're using a wireless mic that can be passed around the table. Now obviously, students who are nearer the camera are more visible. Students who are further away are less visible. Those at the back, very hard to see. But the wireless mic means that we can hear clearly from everyone. And if students at the back stand up, at least we'll know who's speaking. So this is a good way of coping with a very large group in this kind of setting. So here's another large group seated in, I suppose, a dedicated conference room at their school. As you can see, the tables have been moved out of the way and they've got lots of room to move around in, which is great because they're coming up to this chair at the front to speak into the microphone. Now the good thing about that is that everyone will then be clear and easy to understand. It'll also be easy to see who's speaking. However, because the mic is down there where they're speaking and the camera is up here where we're looking from, it's very difficult to maintain eye contact. The room is also very bright. There's lots of natural light, and natural light and webcams aren't the biggest fans of one another. Artificial light makes for a much better situation. Here's another group of students seated around a table. The camera is at the front in a laptop, and there's a mic to pass around. So having the mic on a cable like that means that it can be passed around so all the students can be heard. It's quite a small group, so it's fairly easy to see everyone, though it's obviously much easier to see those students who are seated near the front of the class. The lighting is another issue. You can see that we are on natural light here rather than artificial, and that the two sources are on the two sides of the room. The students on the right are fairly easy to see because of the light coming in from the window on the left. But those on the left are a little darker, so a little harder to make them out. In this example, we have a dedicated VC room with a zoomable camera. So we've zoomed in on the student who's speaking, so it's easy to see her and to see the other students and guests sitting there listening to her. Remember though, that if you're using a speaking chair, you don't need to have an expensive zoomable camera, because instead of zooming the camera to the student, you can move the student to the camera and get a pretty similar impression without the expense. Okay, now this is a well lit group of students. Again, artificial light, nice background, they look really good. It's easy to see pretty much everyone who's here, although there are one or two off to the right who are off camera. There's a corded mic. Now this is good for those students in the front row who can just pass it to one another, but for the students seated further back, it makes it a little bit more challenging, and of course it may delay things as the corded mic has to be passed back, which of course can tangle with people and it can create a little bit of difficulty. So this would be a situation where a wireless mic or a speaking chair might actually make it even better. Here we've got another speaking chair in use. A big group of students you can see in this room, and we can see most of them, with one student coming up to the front to speak directly into the camera. Now this is great. We've got a really clear image of the person speaking. We can see everyone sitting in the background really well. Because the mic's up at the front, we're getting a lovely clear audio signal. It's really good. It would be even nicer if we were able to reduce the glare from the natural light coming in at the back. But again, it's all a question of what we're able to do with the rooms that we're actually working in. Now this is the last one we're going to look at, and it has a lot of strengths. It's very well lit. Everyone can be clearly seen, all the students in the room. We have two students seated up at the front in the speaking chair. That in a way is really good, because it means that while one student is speaking, another one can be changing positions, so we have this continuity of dialogue. Instead of one person coming up to the front, going away, next person coming down, we have somebody at the front speaking, listening, taking part all the time. It's a very, very effective technique. So let's reflect on the things that we've learned. When we're thinking about how we set up the video conference, and we're going to think about it setting up in the room we are working in, what do we want to do? Well, obviously we want more of certain things. We want more visible faces. Okay, we want to be able to see the students who are taking part. We particularly want to see the face of the student who's speaking. We want more access to the mic. Now, whether you do that by having a roving mic, ideally a wireless one that can be passed all the way around, or you do it by having a speaking chair so the mic's up at the front, doesn't matter. But it's important that we're able to get at it, that we don't need to pass a wired mic around, because that can take a little while. That can introduce a break into the discussion. And of course, breaks are what we don't want. We want continuity. We want a smooth flow of dialogue. We don't want to be waiting for somebody from the back to come up to the front, or indeed for the mic to be passed all the way around the room to find the person who actually wants to speak. So continuity is really valuable, because we only have, on the whole, 60 minutes for most VCs. And we want more artificial light. Artificial light works much better with webcams than natural light. So what do we want less of? We want less background chat. If we have one open mic that everyone's speaking into, the mic doesn't know who's speaking, so it picks up all the noise in the room. So it'll pick up the person who's speaking, it'll pick up the person in the row behind them who's talking about something with their neighbour. Makes it difficult for everyone. We want less movement. We want to try and minimise the amount of students moving about, or indeed the moving about of a microphone, because both of those things mean breaks. Okay, and sometimes those can be what seem like quite long breaks in a VC, where people are getting things sorted out. And we want less natural light, particularly in the viewpoint of the camera, because it's very bright and it can sort of really wash out the scene, make it hard to see. Here's a good tip to help you think about how you set up your room. You can always check using the picture-in-picture. So here I am talking to Anna on Skype, though fortunately I'm muted so she can't hear me telling you all about this. And you'll see that down in the corner here there is a little box that has a picture of me, and we can make this a bit larger. Okay, Now that enables you to check your own room layout so that you're able to say, well, I know what my room looks like, I know what the lighting is, I know where the students are sitting, I know what the other school are going to see. It's very easy in a video conference just to think about what we can see on our screen. But actually that's only half what's important. We need to be thinking about the image we're sending out as well. But that's how you do it. You can do the same thing in BlueJeans as well. It's really easy to check that picture in picture. Remember as well, when you're doing the test with our VC team, they will help you with this. They'll make suggestions about camera placement, about mic placement, about natural light. We are always here to help, and we always will do our best to help you, to help your students have the best experience that they can. Thank you.